What if the divine you're searching for isn't hidden in distant temples or lofty prayers, but lies in the depths of your own being? What if you've always carried the beloved inside you, just waiting to be discovered? Throughout history, mystics and poets have spoken of the divine presence, an eternal force that transcends the material world. But what if the divine isn't something to be discovered in distant realms or outside of us? What if the beloved is already within, waiting for us to notice? Rumi, one of the greatest spiritual poets, reveals a profound truth. The divine isn't an external entity. It is a living presence embedded in the very fabric of who we are. This journey is not about searching elsewhere for the sacred, but about recognizing and embracing it within. In this exploration, we will delve into Rumi's vision of the beloved, a force that exists within every soul. Through his poetry, we'll uncover how connecting to this internal divine presence can radically transform your spiritual path. Get ready to see yourself and your practice in an entirely new light. For many, the quest for spiritual fulfillment often feels like a pursuit of something distant and elusive. We are taught to look outward for the sacred, whether through rituals, prayers, or searching for the divine in places and people far removed from ourselves. Yet, for many, these external efforts often feel unfulfilling. The sense of connection remains fleeting, and the yearning for something greater lingers unanswered. The problem lies not in the absence of the divine, but in the way we search for it. The paradox is simple. We are already one with the divine, yet we fail to recognize it within. Why is it so difficult for us to see what has always been present? How do we come to realize that the beloved, which we seek outside, is intimately tied to our own existence? Rumi offers the answer. The beloved is not a distant god or a mystical figure to chase after. It is within us all along, just waiting to be seen. The challenge is shifting our perspective, moving inward, and recognizing that the divine is not a separate force to be found, but the essence of who we are. To understand Rumi's teachings about the beloved, it's essential to first grasp the significance of this concept. For Rumi, the beloved is not just an abstract idea or a distant deity, but a profound presence that encompasses love, beauty, and the divine within each of us. He speaks of the beloved in many forms, sometimes as a lover, sometimes as a deity, and other times as a guide leading us home to ourselves. But all of these expressions converge on one central truth. The beloved is not external, but an inherent part of our being. Rumi often emphasizes the idea of union, the union between the seeker and the divine. This union is not an abstract goal, but a living, breathing experience that transcends the limitations of the ego and the external world. It is the experience of merging with the divine presence within, and in doing so, realizing our inherent divinity. Take, for example, the famous line from Rumi's divine songs, "I am not a drop in the ocean. I am the entire ocean in a drop." This metaphor speaks to the idea that the whole universe, with all its sacred beauty and infinite potential, resides within each individual. When you realize that you are the whole ocean and not just a small drop, your perception of yourself and your place in the world undergoes a profound shift. The beloved, then, is not a distant ideal, but the very essence of who we are. But the question arises, how do we go from merely understanding this idea intellectually to actually living it? Rumi's answer is both simple and difficult. We must surrender. We must surrender our attachments, our fears, and our rigid sense of self. This is where the true spiritual journey begins, not in seeking or grasping, but in letting go. When we cease trying to control or manipulate our spiritual experience, we create the space necessary for the beloved to reveal itself within us. Rumi's poetry invites us to step out of the ego's narrow vision and open ourselves to the vastness of divine love. The ego constantly seeks to define and limit, but love is boundless. To experience the beloved, we must step beyond the ego's small self and embrace the infinite love that flows through every moment of our lives. The beloved is not just an internal presence, it is the guiding force behind everything we encounter. Every experience, every relationship, every moment of beauty or suffering is an invitation to recognize the divine within. Rumi teaches that we are not separate from the world around us. We are interconnected with all things, and it is through our relationships with others and the world that we come to know the beloved. But in order to recognize the beloved within everything, we must first recognize it within ourselves. Rumi says, "You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life?" This line encapsulates the idea that we are born with the potential for spiritual awakening, yet we often remain bound by the limitations of our own minds. The wings represent our spiritual potential, our connection to the divine, while crawling symbolizes the limited, ego-driven existence we often settle for. To begin recognizing the beloved within, we must turn inward. Meditation, self-reflection, and prayer are all practices that help us connect with this divine presence. But these practices are not about seeking something that is missing. They're about creating the space to remember what has always been there. As Rumi says, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form." In other words, the divine is not something we need to acquire, it is something we need to remember. When we cultivate the inner stillness necessary for recognizing the beloved, we begin to see the world differently. The mundane becomes sacred. Every encounter becomes an opportunity to experience divine love. It is not about waiting for a special moment of transcendence. It is about recognizing the divinity that already exists in every moment. Yet there is still the challenge of how to experience this love fully. Rumi teaches that the key to unlocking the beloved is through love itself. The love Rumi speaks of is not merely an emotion or an attachment. It is the essence of who we are when we transcend the ego and recognize our unity with all of existence. Love, in this sense, is the highest form of spiritual practice. It is what connects us to the beloved, and it is what helps us see the divine in everyone and everything. This love is not passive. It requires action, intention, and surrender. Rumi calls us to open our hearts fully, to love with abandon, and to release all fear and resistance. It is in this radical act of love that the beloved is revealed. And when we experience the beloved within, we are forever transformed. We no longer feel separate from the divine. We become the divine. One of the most profound aspects of Rumi's teachings is the idea that the beloved is not just a part of us, but the very force that shapes our lives. In his poem, The Essential Rumi, he writes, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." The idea of the wound or the brokenness we often feel in life is an integral part of the spiritual journey. Our wounds, our pain, our suffering are not signs of weakness, but gateways to deeper understanding. They are opportunities for the divine to enter and heal us. Through our wounds, we connect with the beloved, and through this connection, we transcend the limitations of the self. Our wounds become the source of our deepest wisdom, and our suffering becomes the space for divine love to flow through us. This is the paradox of Rumi's teachings. The path to the divine is not through avoiding suffering, but through embracing it with love and acceptance. As you continue on your spiritual path, remember that the beloved is always with you. It is not something to be earned or sought after. It is already inside you, waiting to be recognized. Through love, surrender, and acceptance, you can open yourself to the infinite presence of the divine. And when you do, you will experience a profound transformation, one that will change your practice, your relationships, and your very perception of life itself. At the moment you begin to truly recognize the beloved within, a radical shift occurs. You realize that you are not separate from the divine, you are the divine. This is the moment of enlightenment, the moment when the ego falls away, and the infinite love that has always been within you becomes fully apparent. Rumi's poetry constantly invites us to experience this union, not just as an intellectual understanding, but as a lived experience. The moment you acknowledge the beloved within, you are no longer a seeker. You are one with the divine. This realization doesn't come from intellectual knowledge or doctrinal belief. It comes from the direct experience of divine love, an experience that can only be felt, not explained. The key to this realization is surrender. When you stop trying to grasp, when you release your hold on the ego and its demands, the divine begins to flow freely through you. The beloved is no longer a distant ideal. It is the very breath that sustains your existence. You are no longer searching for something outside of yourself because you have found it within. At this moment, your spiritual journey transforms. No longer are you chasing after something that seems unattainable. You have realized that the divine has always been with you, and in that recognition, you become one with the eternal love that permeates the universe. The path to spiritual fulfillment is not about searching for the divine outside yourself. It is about recognizing that the divine has always been within you. Rumi's teachings remind us that the beloved is not a distant, unreachable presence, but the very essence of our being. The spiritual journey is not one of external search, but of inner realization. When we recognize the beloved within, we are no longer separate from the divine. We become the divine. This realization is the key to unlocking your true spiritual potential. And it is through this recognition that you will find the peace, love, and wisdom that you've always sought. If you are ready to experience the divine within, subscribe and continue your journey into spiritual awakening.